Welcome to another Historyologist podcast. Welcome back, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Ologist.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. I was going to say proud, but
Come on, Dad. I mean, Tristan.
very pleased to say we're joined by. Well, you already know we're joined by a special guest, Tim.
Hello.
He's an expert in all things.
Well, I was going to say it's tradition on this show, Tim, that when you come on, that you sort of give an account of your credentials. So, what expertise do you bring to the table?
I've watched some YouTube videos on animals that have passed away before.
As in, like, animals that have just died or... Okay.
I've been to a museum. I've been to a few museums. Yeah.
Can I just point out, we haven't actually introduced the topic of the podcast yet. So, you just watch videos of animals die?
Yeah, essentially.
Some living, some dead.
There were 5 billion species of animals, and only 1%. Only 1% of the animals that ever existed exist now. But we missed out on so many of the cool ones.
Yeah, gotcha.
Could you maybe give us an example of a cool animal that doesn't exist anymore?
The Protodon.
Well, to give the anyone that is listening, to give them a bit of context, Tim contacted us. We've never met this guy before. He contacted us. He saw us walking down the street actually, and he just heard our voice and he goes, "Hey, Historyologist podcast. I've got an idea for a show. Bring me on." And he wanted to talk about some of the videos he's been watching about animals that our ancient ancestors may or may not have seen that we can't see anymore. So, like, i.e., the animals are extinct. Is that a fair summary?
That is a reasonable take.
So, yeah, what would be an example of an animal that doesn't exist anymore that your ancestors may have seen?
The dodo, of which I don't know very much. The Diprotodon is my favourite one. It's a wombat that was the size of a bear, essentially. It's 3 meters long.
Did it do square shits like a wombat?
We don't know that, unfortunately. Or I don't know that, I should say. It had tusks. It was a herbivore, but it had tusks that it used to get at the foliage. But I just like the idea that all these megafauna were so docile because they're just like apex predators, or even if they're herbivores, they're obviously not predators, but nothing messes with them. So just super docile. And pretty much any time our ancestors met these things, they're just like, that's going to give me so much meat, I'm going to kill that. And it's not scared of us because it's massive.
Like, because penguins are so sort of isolated, like when people started rocking up in Antarctica, like the penguins don't react or run away or anything, so you could just sort of like, I think there was a story of like Scott of the Antarctic just walking up and like shooting a penguin in the head and then being like, oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't waste the ammo, and just sort of, the penguin next to the guy is just disappeared, just turns and says, oh shit, doesn't run away, just like, oh man, where'd you go?
In South Africa, there was a subspecies of zebra, exactly the same. So it went around in herds, usually of about 10, 20. Docile, nothing in that area of South Africa attacked it. So humans came, they were already there, white humans came, and they were like, oh, this is awesome. We'll hunt this thing. It's got really cool pelts. It's only half striped, so the back half of it is brown. Other half white and black. They went, killed them all, and then sold some to zoos, and they were thought to be extinct.
30
years after the last ever reported one, this guy saw one and thought it was just like a normal zebra and was like, oh, that looks weird, I'm going to kill it. So
It's literally the Hanno the Navigator gorilla argument. Like, that looks weird. Kill it.
I'm glad you touched on it because I don't believe that at all. That's like, of the things you discussed, that is the most discreditable thing.
Well, you know, it's history, so you have to believe it.
Yes.
It's the wrong attitude to have, sir.
Anyway, so he shot this zebra, or what he thought was a zebra, but just like a mutant one. And it turns out it was an endling, which is the name given to the last surviving member of a species. And it had been roaming the plains for 30 years. These zebras lived for 60 plus years, roaming around, the only one of its species. None of the other zebras would talk to it because it's like, he looks
It's
weird.
a freak.
But they used to laugh and call him names.
Yeah, but just how sad that might be that, yeah, this one freak zebra is just roaming around.
Looking for freak pussy, and there's just none to be found.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a thing like with the whales where if they can't make the exact noise that the other whales hear, no one will interact with it. Like, they're massive animals, but they don't actually meet each other very often. They just go, and then it's like, 60k that way, there's a whale, I'll go meet it. So if you don't make the right noise, you never get to make any friends.
That would explain large sections of my life.
You don't have to make the right whale noise. Yeah, right.
But maybe, all right, what's another extinct animal?
I've got one.
Ooh.
It's actually one of my favourite. I don't know if it's historical, but have you guys heard of Haast's eagle?
No.
No.
It's an eagle that used to live in New Zealand. It's meant to be the biggest eagle to have ever existed.
They had massive birds there.
Supposedly it was, I think it was, lower end 1.5 metres tall plus. And it had a wingspan of, huge.
It's just death with wings.
Yeah. And the birds, or these birds would hunt the moa, like kind of like the emus of New Zealand.
Yeah.
That's what they would hunt to eat. And then the Maoris came over in their migrations, and they hunted the moas to extinction more or less. And so the eagles didn't have anything to to eat, so they eventually died out. But the cool part is there are Maori folk tales where if children are naughty, an evil eagle or something comes and picks them up and takes them away. So
It's so funny.
I kind of think that there's it's kind of like a folktale memory of eagles picking up kids and flying away with which is
Daddy!
which is terrifying.
Just sort of like, at the park with a young bloke, and you're just like, Daddy, watch me do this thing, and you're like, yeah, in a sec, and just I love it.
Rather uncreatively, you mentioned the moa. There was also the moa, and the moa is just bigger than the moa.
Right. That's their defining characteristic.
That's it.
What a beautiful language.
Alexander the Great, he travelled about a bit.
I've heard.
Famously.
So we're told.
He saw an elephant for the first time, and his first idea was, let's weaponize this. This is a tank. This is like the coolest thing ever. But I really do worry about the practicality of using an elephant based on how much they would shit and
Eat and...
yeah. How do you feed them?
They-
Like, surely if you're traveling with an army,
If only you could have expressed your concerns directly to Alexander.
Could have,
You're about 2,500 years too late on this.
bloody made him look like a fool.
The stories do go that the elephants would often scare and stampede and then not actually help him, but actually
Weren't they
cinder the
saying
army.
they're like almost like little elephants? They're not like
The Asian ones, I think.
yeah.
Well, no, see, there is an isolated part of Europe that had pygmy elephants, which, if the way the language works with these kind of things, much the same as your gorilla thing with Hanoi, the word elephant is a universal word for it. So he would be saying, I just went to Africa and I saw these massive elephants. Are so cool. Their only point of perspective for an elephant is these pygmy elephants that are basically the size of like a large dog.
Well, let's say small horse, perhaps.
Small horse.
Just a bunch of grown men on this tiny dog-sized elephant.
Well,
Because there was like European tigers and stuff, or lions as well, wasn't there? You know, I mean, Hercules like
I was going to say the
fought one.
Yeah.
He's known for it.
famously but like you'd be going down the road and like you wouldn't necessarily go by yourself, you know, going from town to town or wherever. You sort of go with a pack because like at any given time you could just get fucked up by a bunch of lions or whatever, and it's like I mean, it's that whole Bronze Age thing where, you know, the mythology of like, you know, a dude fighting some giant beast or whatever, and it's like, you know, giant scorpion, and probably that wasn't real, but you know, that could seems like that's built into the imagination of all of that mythology. Like you would actually just run across like some terrifying beast. You're like, oh shit.
I've got a question for you, Tim. That's right in your wheelhouse. So the you know, the Romans had the Colosseum and the amphitheaters and all that, where they would have you know, games against various exotic creatures.
I would
So
love
based.
to be there because I would just gamble on it all the time. That is,
It,
just sounds amazing. Drinking
but-
wine and
my question was, you know, they used lions from time to time. Do you know if they were European lions or did they ship them up from Africa?
they used a mixture. So basically, the African lions were considered to be larger, but they weren't so much a distinct species. They were just like this Chad group of slightly larger lions that would mate with other large lions, and they created much larger than they were. It's not so much they're a separate species. It's selective breeding. But yeah, they would ship them in and just use whatever they could, essentially.
Or whatever had, whatever they had on hand.
Yeah.
Do you like imagine how difficult it would be to like you just all right, well, cool guys, we're going to go and catch a lion, bring it back to Rome. It's like, well, in modern day you'd probably like you could track it and there's, you know, all that sort of shit, but like best case scenario, you got like 4 dudes just throwing ropes around, you know, you wouldn't like you've got it and then oh no. Like,
They said part of the reason why this larger variety of lion died out was because they had to import so many. It was just like the only way to keep people happy was this bigger lions, bigger lions.
They love the blood sport, those Romans.
well, I mean, me too.
It's weird. In Egypt, they actually did have lions. So when they would have to go travel really far away to quarry certain minerals, that was the only time they'd ever encountered the lions. Like they just kept to themselves, had no interest in going into the towns. But they don't have anywhere near as many records of lions as they do like cats and
Crocs and stuff.
Yeah. It's
Well,
really,
a lion is a cat.
Huh.
I've learned something. That might be the dumbest thing I've ever said.
So far. Okay, well, what are your thoughts on the old thylacine? I mean, it's not quite a Bronze Age thing, but it was probably around then. You being the expert, of course.
So when Gondwana land existed, which is when Australia was connected with like Papua New Guinea and other islands, the thylacine was everywhere. So we call it a Tassie tiger because it died here, and so we're just lucky because it was the last place it existed, or did it? So
It's meant to be
It's like a hyper evolved.
I saw.
Yeah,
I
New
too
Guinea.
saw a YouTube video of that the thylacine is meant to be up in the hills somewhere in New Guinea or something.
Well,
But no one's ever.
if it was going to exist,
Found
I
it.
think it would be in Papua New Guinea. There have been examples, and like a lot of it's dubious kind of ancient aliens kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
So-
there are sinkholes in certain areas where they reckon there are extinct species.
There was one that I saw, and it was this villager. It was only recently this video, and there was a villager in whatever town. He's like, yeah, and people were showing him the photo of it, and he's like, yeah, that's like one of my pets. He's like, come back next week, and I'll bring him in and show you. And they're like awesome.
Yeah.
Come back next week, and he's like, oh yeah, he died out bush, and I have to. Just bury him out there. It's always like something like that,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think the thylacine probably does exist. Well, yeah, I like to believe that.
Well, did you know it's like not a species of dog, but like
a marsupial.
it's possum that sort of decided to go apex predator. But what are your thoughts on bringing the thing back, Tim? I get all fizzed up when I hear.
Or like bringing the mammoth back, or
Yeah.
Well, what's the point? Because they're not going to be able to
our
reintroduce them.
entertainment.
Well, if we brought back the Colosseum, possibly.
Oh, okay. Now
Colosseum 2.0 Ancient Animal Edition.
I mean, it's like to try and to try and somehow like repopulate it, and it's just a nonsensical idea. But for our entertainment, makes sense.
Well, because I was thinking because whenever you you hear people all the time being like, "Oh, it'd be great to bring it back," and it's like, well, no, there's a reason they got rid of them and they put the pound bounty on them because they were like eating livestock and all that sort of shit. And so you'd bring it back just to have it in captivity. And I'm like, no, that's probably not great. But if we're bringing them back to like solve the questions that need answering, like how many thylacine does it take down a woolly mammoth, or a gorilla?
When I was in primary school, kids learn to lie at a certain age. It's just like they get that all of a sudden they're like, I can say something that's not true and it might get away with it. I discovered lying in about grade 2. And I remember telling this kid, I was like convinced I was a genius. And I'm just like writing down in my book. He's like, what are you writing? I'm like, I'm just calculating how many cavemen it would take to kill a dinosaur. It's like, how many? I'm like, 5. Independently of whether or not they would have met, which that they wouldn't have, because completely different periods of time. I just decided I'm gonna pretend I'm gonna pretend I have a formula for calculating how many people could do that. But
Did it specify like what kind of dinosaur? Because I think that's a variable you need to consider.
at that point, my lying extended to dinosaur.
Like, do you think you could like punch to death, like is it Brachiosaurus? Is that the one of the big giraffe-looking one? You're just sort of like, It's
Well,
hard
Probably
work.
not. Yeah,
It'll
probably
take a
not.
while.
Yeah, I got really into bug fights for a little bit, which is like a very questionable side of the internet, where it's like, I don't know if this is inhumane, but they would put certain
Well,
bugs
it's not,
that
because
would
they're bugs.
never meet, like just from completely different parts of the world, not feed them, which is what they did in the Colosseum and stuff. They would not feed the animals, so they were like extra violent. But yeah, he'd put these 2 bugs and be like, who will win, scorpion or beetle? And you'd watch it. And
In this instance, who won?
the beetle.
It's cool.
Mm.
It's cool. I'm down on that.
Do you know if some of these ancient peoples had a sense of like they were causing extinctions? Like, were they like, man, we used to be able to hunt, or you know, we got our lions or whatever from here, but now they're all gone. Oh no, now we'll just use an antelope instead.
Yeah.
I don't think they had much perspective on it. They were pretty happy to wipe things out. They did it so many times, and at some point, a lot of these ancient people would have communicated with each other and been like, "Oh, man, we killed all of our big birds. Now we've only got the little birds. We better keep them alive." But I don't know when that
I
happened.
mean, but even like the buffalo, for example, like the American one, and it's like, you know, they're around forever, and then like by 1850, it just sort of it's so perfectly industrialized, just running a whole herd of them off cliffs. You know, it was just like, oh, well, I guess that was it. Whoops.
Wish they weren't so goddamn yummy.
We've covered a lot. We've learned a fair bit.
Learned some things.
Um,
Learned lions are in fact cats.
Yeah. Learned when you discovered lying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And kind of makes me wonder,
Somewhat alarmingly in grade 2.
did you ever stop?
Well, I've managed to talk my way onto being on this show by saying that I know a lot about animals without knowing that a lion is a cat.
We've been hoodwinked.
Rug pull, I've just watched a YouTube video and I wasn't really paying attention.
All right, as a passing thing, have you heard like the idea that, you know, like, because you've got all these cultures with different myths of dinosaurs, you know, like, well, dragons, sorry, you know, various forms, but like maybe there's this ancestral memory or cultural memory of like people actually like getting fucked up by probably not fire breathing, but like some big flying lizard thing, and the reason we don't have even found like archaeological evidence of that because they have hollow bones like birds and stuff, so like probably bullshit, but I like the idea of, you know, people fighting flying lizards. It's pretty cool.
I think it's almost certainly bullshit.
I'm glad you said something more dubious than any of the other things that I said.
You didn't know that a lion was a cat.
Because if their bones are like too brittle to be fossilized, what about the huge claws or the teeth?
The teeth.
The teeth, man.
Just
Be a dentist. Think of the teeth.
Dentologist again.
A dentologist.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it's been a pleasure.
that was a time.
Went far better than expected.
I was going to say that's 20 minutes we'll never get back, but you could say that about literally any time in your life.
Literally.
All time. But Tim, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to the next.
Yeah. We'll call you.
Here's my card. Oh wait, it doesn't have any
Contact information.
Anyone listening, feel free to reach out. We've got Historyologist business cards now. We can send you one. Just send us your address. And we'll
5-star podcast.
5-star podcast.
Thank you for having me on the only 5-star podcast on Spotify.
I'm convinced it is the only 5-star podcast. So, yeah.
That's the quality you get.
If anyone rates our podcast less than 5, I'll be petitioning to get that removed.
I'll be so fizzed up.
Ban this guy.
Yeah.